Okay, you've heard them before on the channel during the Raiders of the Lost Ark collaboration, where they shared all their Indiana Jones and Steven Spielberg thoughts last month. They are filmmakers, they are producers, they're co-founders of a Canadian-based streaming service available worldwide, and they are cinephiles just like you and just like me. She's from a very small town outside of Toronto named after a wooden bridge. And he's got the kind of fashion sense I could only dream of pulling off, even in my best Hawaiian shirt here right now. Please welcome Melissa D'Agostino and Matt Campagna. Hello, you two.
Hello.
Thank you. You set a high bar with all the stuff I see you wearing on the internet, so I had to come fully prepared today.
Thanks.
Now, for anyone who's not following both of you, I will have all of the descriptions for all of your social media handles in this episode. I would highly encourage people to go check out everything you do over on your pages. You're always posting fun reviews and things right when you get out of the movie theater. Without diving into all of those movie reviews right now, I do want to do a little bit of background on the two of you for people who might not be familiar with you. So we're going to have plenty of time on this little hour that we have set aside to talk about HighballTV, which is something I really want to learn about. And then I also want to take some time to talk about your newest film that you two directed together, Paige Darcy, Reluctant Detective, which is a movie I am completely enamored with. But let's start out with just kind of getting a little background on the two of you and your movie interests, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I fell in love with movies very young. I would say The Wizard of Oz was probably my gateway into movie love and wanting to make movies as a kid. That and Alice in Wonderland really were my two jumping off points. But I grew up learning dance and singing and acting, and I went to theater school. So I started out very much as a theater kid and have made a lot of theater in my time, and then slowly started editing in television and then writing screenplays and then making some video content. And when I met Matt, we just started making things together because Matt was already quite an accomplished filmmaker when we met, I would say.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
And for me, I grew up on blockbusters that I was way too young to watch. I was watching RoboCop and Terminator when I probably should have been watching like the Teletubbies, and I just loved crazy genre. Whether it was violence from a Western that I was too young to watch or from a robot cyborg, I just loved wild genre. And Star Trek was a huge part of my upbringing as well. So there's some morality thrown in there while I was watching Verhoeven blow people to bits. And
satirically.
Yes.
Satirically, yeah.
Yes,
in a very high-minded, highbrow, satirical way.
Yes.
But I think I realized I wanted to be a filmmaker when I saw Batman.
We're talking 1989, the original. Yeah.
Tim Burton just going nuts with, not a great adaptation, but an incredible movie. I loved everything about that movie, and I wanted to get into filmmaking and animation, and I also wanted to be an astronaut because Star Trek had me really confused. So I was always in that genre space. And then once I had the chance to make a movie after I graduated university, the first feature film I wanted to make was a post-apocalyptic Western that had some sci-fi elements that I could afford, but looked like a bunch of guys running around in a desert because that's what I could actually afford. And that's this movie here, 6 Reasons Why. And so that sold in a crazy international bidding war and sort of started everything off for me. From there, I did some work for Sony and the Sci-Fi Channel. I've made a lot of indie films, which is where I have the most fun because I have control. Sci-Fi's great, Sony's great, but you're making a movie for them. I like to make a movie for me. And so for me, having that freedom is what made all the difference. So indie film, man, that's my thing.
I am so eager to. I've spent so much time watching Paige Darcy and Mother of All Shows, which is a show that Melissa directed and starred in, which we might talk a little bit about as well. But I'm also incredibly excited to dive into all of your films, Matt, which I haven't had a chance to yet because we've talked offline about sort of our mutual love of Firefly, which is right here behind me, which is a huge inspiration for me. It's fun. It's like low budget, but it's also got a ton of heart and warmth. And it seems like you're sort of making movies in that same spirit, which really captured my attention.
Yeah, when I made this one, Firefly was only a few years old, and was a big influence on me. Joss Whedon's imagination around what a futuristic frontier could be like was really impactful for me.
It's funny because Firefly, an episode of Voyager and Firefly are sort of the jumping off points for a Western we're currently writing that we're shooting in the winter that isn't post-apocalyptic. It's actually just a period Western. But there was an episode of Voyager that he introduced me to that I just fell in love with. And then we talked about Firefly. We revisited some episodes. So it continues to be an inspiration.
Now, if I had to ask you to pull a couple of maybe straight Westerns and a couple of straight sci-fi movies that either of the two of you just really love or influenced by, could you pull out a couple of them that have sort of formed your own opinion as a filmmaker?
Sure. I mean, in my top 4 on Letterboxd is Once Upon a Time in the West, which is to me the single greatest Western ever made, and Contact, which to me might be the single greatest science fiction film ever made. Those would be my 2 pure in I'd almost call Contact speculative future, but it's SF all the way.
Yeah. I'd say Unforgiven is in my top of Westerns. I really love that one. I also, we've been watching some really sort of deep cut spaghetti Westerns, and every once in a while you find a real gem. Sometimes, you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find the gems sometimes. But it's been a fun exercise. In terms of sci-fi, I think I'm more of a speculative future kind of gal. Movie. That's such an interesting question.
And you've seen a lot of Star Trek movies.
I have a lot of Star Trek. Yeah, I don't know that I would. I like the series more than I like the movies.
Anyone with taste does.
I was gonna ask you how much of a hot take you wanted to put on record as far as your love or dislike of JJ's Star Trek universe.
Yeah, and that's a little, yeah.
I think their Star Wars movies dressed up in NCC 1701 doesn't do it for me. The third one was cool because Simon Pegg knows Star Trek.
Yeah, I think the third one did some things the other two didn't. They're fine. Like, I don't have a hot take. I think it's a very lukewarm, like, sure. I'm also not as much of a Trekkie as Matt is, and he's done a lot of introducing to me. My sister's a big Trekkie, so growing up, I actually kind of resented Next Generation because over dinner we would watch TV and she would always put on TNG and I would want to watch sitcoms. And so there was always a tension between us, but I did absorb a lot of it and actually liked a lot of it. And then I'm a huge Scott Bakula fan because I loved Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap was my favorite show growing up. And so
Enterprise was kind of your gateway drug.
A little bit, yeah. Because anywhere Bakula went, I followed. Yeah.
Okay, I am going to put a hot take on the board right now, and I'm curious where you fall on it. Are you Captain Kirk or are you Picard, if you had to pick one or the other?
Hottest take? I'm going to Kobayashi Maru this. Janeway.
Nice.
I'm gonna also deviate. I'm gonna go Cisco.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Demigod, good choice.
Yeah, I feel like I mean, okay, if I'm sticking to your question, I'm going to say Picard. But because I think Kirk's not my kind of captain, but I respect, his place in the
Although as
canon.
We discuss this right now, this week, a new episode of Strange New Worlds came out.
Yeah.
Where, Wesley's doing an interesting job being Bill, and I think his Kirk adds some really cool layers to it. Layers that I don't think are there in the brash version that Pine plays. But it feels like Bill Shatner's character. And I like that about it. And there's a thing about the way that the original series feels like a Western and TNG feels like a diplomatic series. And I like that Western vibe. And so if I had to choose between Picard and Kirk, I might choose Kirk.
Yeah.
Just because he's out there discovering things as opposed to negotiating things, which is great and beautiful, but not as fun.
Yeah.
So do you two still both keep up on all of the Star Trek television out there, whether it's the Picard series or Strange New World or Like, I've kind of fallen out of
Oh,
Star Trek fandom. You're still into it?
He does.
Yeah,
He
and
watches
I
everything.
even watched that absolute garbage Section 31.
Brutal.
Speak about hot takes.
Like,
Poor Michelle Yeoh. What are you doing?
I know, and there are some lovely actors in there, like Umberly Gonzalez is fantastic. She's done so dirty in that movie. In fact, the movie is just terrible and shouldn't exist.
It's at the bottom. It's in like my bottom 10 of the year, and every time I show people my list, they're like, "I didn't even realize that was a thing." And I say, "That's probably a good thing that you're not even aware of its existence."
You're better off.
He keeps up. I don't. I will watch the first couple episodes of something, and then if it's not a thing I'm into, then Matt's like, I'll just keep watching it myself. But we watched Strange New Worlds, and I was into it, so I kept watching that. So
Yeah,
I like the vibe.
You took Discovery all the way to that first horror episode in
Yeah.
the first season.
And then I was like, no thanks. Yeah.
So what do you two think about the idea? And it gets talked about all the time. And I just saw it again in the news this week where I think somebody had actually gotten their hands on the outline of what he was going to do. But there was a long-standing rumor that Quentin Tarantino wanted to dip his toes into the Star Trek world. Would you have any interest in a Tarantino Star Trek film or series?
I'd watch that.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'd watch it, probably not enjoy it, but I'd watch it. Also, I think Tarantino's not enough of a box office draw, and the JJ verse isn't enough of a box office draw to make a $200 million blockbuster. Like, these movies are $150 to $200 million, and I think that's their mistake. They keep trying to make Star Trek the motion picture for way too much money. They're trying to make a Star Wars movie, and the audience isn't there for that. You need to make a $99 million blockbuster Star Trek film that's actually like a philosophical movie couched in sci-fi with a little bit of pew-pew, and then everybody's happy. But you're not trying to make $1 billion at the box office, because it's not going to happen.
And I just feel like there are too many Star Trek fans who would watch a Quentin Tarantino film and say, this is not my Star Trek. My Star Trek is not, 20 F-bombs
in the
1920s and slurs and like whatever nonsense that's going to be. It's like, I just don't think those two fandoms coalesce enough for that to be, something worth making.
I totally agree. I think that Tarantino has so many stands out there that I don't know if they fully understand the world of Star Trek, and I don't know if they would mesh well with that universe and vice versa. I just think it would be a really ugly push and pull between the two fandoms, and so it's probably best that we never are going to end up in that world right there.
Yeah, it's like when someone decided they wanted to make a 21 Jump Street sequel that was a Men in Black movie. It's like, I mean, just because you own two things doesn't mean you should play with the two things at once. I don't know, man.
But wasn't Die Hard supposed to be?
Die Hard 3 was a lethal weapon pitch.
Right,
yes.
Which, would have worked either way.
Yeah.
Now, you bring me to a great next question, and kind of a segue into the next part that I want to talk about really with you two. And so you had mentioned sort of the idea that, every Star Trek movie nowadays, they're trying to make this giant $200 million project. And it feels like we're in this world now where it's feast or famine in terms of a budget for a movie. And there's giant blockbuster movies that have a really high threshold for what they have to make to have a return on investment. And then there are movies that are just made for like shoestring budgets and pennies on the dollar. And it doesn't feel like we live in this world too much anymore where there's a nice mid-budget market the way it felt like there used to be for so long in the Hollywood system. And you two obviously operate in a system of making films, and you're constantly dealing with that. What are your thoughts right now on just the landscape of film right now in terms of this huge gulf in this divide between big budget, a lack of mid-budget, and then small budget? How do you feel about the place we're in right now with film and budgetary situations?
I mean, I kind of feel like our only hope is horror, because those are the films that seem to make money when you spend more than nothing. But nobody needs $200 million to make one. James Gunn has greenlit a Clayface movie for $50 million. That's the first mid-budget movie I've heard of in the longest time. And it's going to be a straight-up horror. And I think that is a very cool move. Because if that does well, suddenly the purse strings are going to open for some $30 to $60 million movies. Because you're right, if it's not huge, it's got to be nothing.
Yeah, we need a reset, I think. I feel like, if you look at tentpoles like Marvel movies or if they were to back off those budgets a bit, they could still make, in fact, I think they could make better movies. I think part of the other issue is that they're spending so much money, but the quality isn't there because they're so removed from the storytelling at that point. It's just all too untenable. And so I think we need a reset. I think we're going to be forced into one because none of this is sustainable. We've learned so many lessons. We've learned that straight to streaming or not windowing is not lucrative. We had a perfectly good system where home video, as we want to call it that, was making money for people. And now, for the first time, I think ever, you can make a movie for millions of dollars and it can be worth nothing. Someone, you can't get a cash deal for it. You can't get any money for it. That's wild and completely unsustainable, not just for indie filmmakers and smaller studios, but I think for the larger studios too. There's only so long you can put that much money. I mean, I know some of them have giant cash hoards and they Scrooge McDive into their earnings that aren't media earnings, but at a certain point, it's not sustainable for them either, and they'll shelve it to get a tax write-off, right? Yeah. Which is devastating.
The fact that we'll never see Batgirl because Zaslav wanted a $15 million tax dodge is an atrocious affront to art. I mean, I don't even care if it was bad. It's a movie we should get to see. It's Michael Keaton in the bat suit. We deserve to see it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, those guys had just made Ms. Marvel, which was arguably one of the best series Marvel had done. Like, it's just kind of gross how much NBA suits are responsible for show business instead of showbiz people. Like, Zaslav comes from reality TV. He made his money selling ice road truckers. And for some reason, he's in charge of Batman now? I'm glad they cut his salary.
I'm interested in this Paramount CEO who's talking about windowing and talking about, I mean, a lot of them, when they come into that power, say that at first, and then remains to be seen what happens. But it is nice to see that they're at least talking about the fact that windowing has value.
Yeah, we do it with our movies. Like, there was a time when you would make your money in the theater. When that money was gone, 3, 4, 8 months, however long that took, you would get to the next stage, which was selling DVDs, VHS, Blu-rays, whatever. Then you would, at the same time, be dealing with someone like HBO for a premium VOD rental opportunity. And then you would talk about what your network debut is going to be. You would talk about when it would, find its way to the Walmart bin to save money. Like, there were windows, is what those were called. And now it's like Superman's coming out 45 days after. Yeah. Like, that's bonkers fast.
And yet somehow F1 is getting like an IMAX re-release. I'm like, what universe are we living in?
Where Apple TV Plus, the streaming platform, is more behind theatrical than the storied 100-year-old film studio. I don't get it.
And then on the flip side, Apple Plus will also have the nerve to do what they're doing right now, which is they're releasing very select in the United States Spike Lee's new film, Highest to Lowest. But I think in like 7 or 10 days, it's going to be available on the Apple Plus platform. And so it doesn't really incentivize anyone to go and support a filmmaker like Spike Lee, who's got a proven track record. And you would assume you would want to go see a Denzel property, one of our few leading men these days who's sort of a bankable star. And so it feels like even streamers themselves are sort of wrestling with what the right strategy is.
Yeah.
Your point about how there's two kinds of movies. There's the F1s that cost, that need to make $1 billion or someone loses money. And then there's the indie film style Spike Lee films that they're willing to support this much and then go send it to where they don't have to back it up.
But it's wild to be calling it an independent film when it's an Apple TV Plus property. Like, that's what's crazy about the moment we're in, because that's a Spike Lee, Denzel Washington. It's a a remake of a Kurosawa movie. Like, these are big names and big property with money behind them. So it's wild.
Do you feel we're like in a situation now where our last sort of defense in that mid-budget area is the A24s of the world and the Neons of the distribution world, in terms of, it seems like they will at least want to grab some of the market share for some of those movies that are coming out of film festivals, and they're desperate to get traction and get into that awards race. And it feels like Anora last year was a pretty nice success where it wasn't a huge budget picture, and Sean Baker had to scrap to get that thing together. And then through that awards run, it picked up a nice chunk of money at the box office. And there have been other success stories. Matt, to your point, I think horror is kind of one of those last vestiges where you'll get a Long Legs last year, which probably didn't cost a ton of money, and the word of mouth's really strong. Weapons, the word of mouth has been incredible. A $70 million opening weekend for Weapons is shocking, but something we should all be really celebrating at this point.
Yes.
Agreed.
Making that horror money. It's great.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're at a time when A24 is sort of at a crossroads, and they're starting down the wrong road of trying to make more commercial, bigger movies, because that's how you Annapurna yourself into oblivion. Like, either you do what Neon does and stick to your knitting, or you end up having to get bought by somebody because you made a wrong move and you get MGM'd into, just a chunk of Amazon's catalog.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that A24 will celebrate their filmmakers that they built a relationship with, but sometimes it can be at the expense of their business model, where I think about The Northman. I'm a huge fan of that film, but they gave Robert Eggers a lot of money, I think somewhere in the upper range of about $100 million to make that film, and it didn't have a huge box office return. And so it's like, I think they sort of shot themselves in the foot a little bit by the amount of capital they put into that movie, as opposed to sticking with what they know, what they're good at.
Hello. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan. And Movies and Us is a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection.
Our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This film podcast is all about us and our shared stories.
And so we invite you to join us in conversations about movies and the stories that connect us. So you can follow Movies and Us wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube at Movies and Us.
Which leads me to HighballTV, so you two, in my opinion, are revolutionaries in this landscape of streaming. I don't know anyone else out there, and people can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know anyone else out there who's doing something like you two are doing in this streaming universe we're in, where there's the Netflix of the world, the Paramount Pluses, the Apple Pluses, all these big entities, and then you have HighballTV, which is this really wonderful streaming service that you two have. So you're based in Canada, but you have distribution rights in other countries, and I think it's literally a $5 a month subscription, or you can pay $50 for the year, so you can get a nice little annual break. And I had the chance to dig into it over the last couple of weeks and was floored with the amount of variety that you two have on this service, and the amount of stuff that I've never seen or heard of before, where usually when I'm on Netflix or HBO or whatever the case may be, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that they're pushing with their algorithm, and they're trying to like force me into the small little box they want. And what I was discovering with Highball as I was going down the rabbit hole was there were all these films by these all countries of the world where I had never discovered these movies, heard of them, seen of them, and my watch list just started growing rapidly. So let's talk about Highball for a minute. What was the general concept for why you two decided to create your own streaming platform? I mean, that's such a groundbreaking idea, and I would love to know the genesis for that.
Sure. Well, thanks for saying all that. It's thrilling to hear how much you're enjoying it. We started it because in Canada, we have a lot of avenues to get resources, which is different than the States. We have sort of grants, and we have different avenues for funding. And we had made a web series that was 3 episodes, 10 minutes each. We made it ourselves with our own money for fun. And in it, picked up some steam. It went to some film festivals.
It did really well on Amazon.
It did really well on Amazon. I won an award in Canada for it, and so
you won a Canadian Oscar.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Thank you. And so we were like, let's make a second season and let's get some money, because wouldn't it be great to have a little more money, some more resources to do it? So we were applying for a fund here, and in order to access that money, you have to have a broadcaster attached. So you have to go and pitch it, and you have to have someone who is eligible say, yes, we will help you make your project. And at that time in Canada, there were 2 places making comedy. And we went to both of them, and they both said, wow, this is really great, but we don't know how this fits into what we're making right now. And you've already made a season. We like to get in on the ground floor. We heard a lot of different, reasons, even though they responded to the material. And so we were working with our business affairs team. And at that time, people were starting to apply to be eligible for digital broadcast channels. So if they had a YouTube channel, that might count, or if they had created their own site to distribute films or series in Canada, they would be eligible. And Matt looked at that, and because Matt had spent a lot of years coding, he was like, oh, I could just build that. So we just built it. And really, we joke all the time that it's easier to build your own streaming service than to get a broadcaster attached to your project in Canada. I think that's still true.
That's an amazing line, by the way.
Oh, yeah. It's easier to build one than to work with one.
Yeah. So we built it, and then we didn't get that money. We came close, but we didn't get it. And then people started coming to us and saying, hey, I signed a distribution deal for 15 years and no one can find my movie anywhere. Or I signed a distribution deal, but it's only available in Canada and I want other people to see it. And so we started then to work directly with filmmakers to either, create a more robust distribution for their film, or to distribute it at all. There were lots of films that had gone on festival runs and then not gotten picked up. There's only so many places to that will buy or exhibit your work, right?
Yeah, the sad truth about the film festival circuit is that it might be the only time your film plays outside of your home country. If you're from Europe, if you're from South America, there's not much of a market for, hey, my cool local film got picked up by a local broadcaster and that's it. They call that not commercial. And so what we did was we thought, well, what if we took 200 not commercial movies and put them in a basket together? Because that sounds like a pretty commercial offering. It's a bunch of film festival movies that you can now see again that you might have missed when they were on their festival runs. And it turned out that was very commercial because we did it just a bit before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit and film festivals stopped existing. Or
had to pivot.
Growth. Yeah. We had a crazy growth of people who were like, well, I want the film festival experience and I want to see these movies and I can't. And everybody was stuck at home. And we initially did an ad campaign for Italians because Italians were one of the first to go into like a quarantine.
Yeah.
And it spiked in Italy. We were like, oh, that really worked. And then it was global. And then Highball had quite a little shot in the arm.
And, the fun full circle thing is, because we started it as a means of getting our own productions made, then during the pandemic, films weren't really up and in production because nobody knew how to do it safely. We didn't understand what was happening and we wanted to be safe. And so a sales agent that we work with,
the one who sold
6 Reasons Why, said, hey, I have these financiers and they're itching to finance something. And no one can make anything, but I know you have this script that you can shoot one person at a time on green screen and then composite everybody together because Matt has a lot of experience with that. And he had this Western that was really just a chase in the desert. So mostly just 2 characters that could shoot one at a time. And so we were one of the first films back up in Canada, at least that I'm aware of. And we shot it with a crew of 5 people. Some people were over Zoom. Matt was the entire camera department. And we were able to do that. And then those financiers said, wow, that was great. Let's do another one. And then we started to grow our production arm from that. So
we've made 13 movies since then.
Yeah.
What I love so much about Highball TV after digging into it for a couple of weeks is I'm always saying that there's this huge void, at least here in American distribution, where it doesn't feel like you can find the short videos or whether it's animated shorts, live action shorts, documentaries. There's all of these things that come award season, everybody's like desperately trying to get their hands on to watch. And a lot of times it's just hard to find them anywhere. And when I was digging through Highball, I was coming across all of these festival films, short films. There's one in particular that stood out to me called Torrey Pines, which I posted on social media, which completely floored me. Just the everything about that. The Drawer Boy, which I know that you two, that's a feature that was basically the kickoff for Highball TV, which I had a lot of fun with. There were so many movies I was finding. Rude Boy, which is a documentary about Trojan Records. I'm a huge reggae fan and ska fan, so that was a cool one to find. So there's all of these gems that I've never heard of before that I was discovering in real time through watching Highball. And so I would encourage people who are listening or watching right now, if you love finding new film out there, Highball is the place to go in terms of what my tastes were needing at the time. And yet also there were still some really recognizable classics out there. I found Buster Keaton's The General, one of my all-time favorites, Diabolique, another favorite of mine. There's a lot of really great stuff. How have you found the challenges, the pros, the cons with the distribution process? Like, is it easy, or like what's it like to get something that maybe can only play in Canada or only play in the United States, or pick it up? How is that process? Because I don't feel like a lot of people probably understand what goes into the distribution of the streaming model.
Sure. I mean, I was very fortunate that I had a crash course when I sold this movie in distribution internationally, because we made a deal in India first, and we were really excited about that. And then the movie leaked on what was Pirate Bay at the time, and we hadn't closed our North American deal yet. And we were like, "Oh my God, the North American deal is the one with the money. The $7,000 deal. This is crazy. We might lose like $250,000 for the sake of a $7,000 deal." And so we were like losing our minds about that, as we were also trying to make other deals in like the Benelux region. I'm like, where is that? And I found out that Benelux is, part of Scandinavia. And I sort of got a crash course in what the common regions for selling movies are. And so when it came time to make some deals with international filmmakers who had the same problem that Canadian filmmakers had, which was, I got on a great world tour over the festival circuit, and now my country is the only country that wants the movie. It was easy for me to wrap my head around how, well, we'll geo-block your country because you've already sold it in your country, but we'll complete your global distribution by making it available everywhere else. And so working directly with filmmakers, it was super easy because they knew what their rights were. They knew where they wanted to pick up, where they wanted to stop sending out Vimeo links to their movies to people in different countries. They wanted to be able to say, hey, I'm on this platform. And when it came to dealing with distribution companies, it was a little different because they were suddenly sending us avails lists, which is like, these are the films that are available in certain countries. And we would say, our biggest audience is in North America, and then from there it's the UK and Australia. It's a very English-speaking audience for a lot of foreign films, which, that's kind of it's emblematic of the festival circuit. And so we were able to start picking up films where we were able to decide region first. Be like, great, we really want to have more in France. What do you have in France? We want to have more in South America. What do you have that's available there? So we started to really pick things up to bolster our international offering. And so it was an interesting crash course to do it in my own movie, and then work it sort of backwards once we had a streaming platform.
Yeah, and it's complicated too because we also do TVOD, so you can rent and buy things as well. And that's an important part of our business model because, people do have subscription fatigue, and I get it. There's so many sites, and as they all raise their prices, it's hard to keep up and to have that many subscriptions. So we like to offer the option, but then some films want to do that, some distribution companies want that, some don't. So every contract is very detailed and specific, and our programming department and our manager really work to figure out the best way forward. And sometimes it isn't worth it to pick it up for a territory that we don't get as much traction and we can't necessarily penetrate. So we make those decisions accordingly.
And everything on the platform is hand curated. We don't have an algorithm that tries to figure out who you are. We put it up in the way we think it's cool. And that's always shifting and changing. We do have a tendency to put our HighballTV originals in like a noticeable place because that's the place that we want to really push our films, and the place where we can make the most money so that it's sustainable so we can make more films. but we try not to put them in the way of, going after the movies from Sundance that you want to go find.
Well, that's what made it fun, was there was an element of discovery to it, which I feel like I've lost touch with through streaming, where it's just, it doesn't matter what category you're in on Netflix, they're gonna keep pushing the same things in your direction, and it sort of felt like the old school going to the Blockbuster or going to the DVD rack and just like finding stuff and clicking on it and reading the description and going, oh, that sounds interesting to my taste. And I was just constantly doing that. And then having the a la carte option was a really cool thing where I could just go, oh, there's just a movie there. If I don't have this subscription, I can still come back to this place and just check out this one particular movie. I loved the customization options of Highball, where it was me discovering things as opposed to this huge streaming service like flooding me with what it wants to tell me. And there was this really cool tab I also found my way into where it was like, here's Melissa's recommends for things that she wants you to see or things she's influenced by. And then Matt, you had a section, and I found Steel City, which is an older movie from a couple decades ago I'd never heard of before, and then it happened to be in your recommend. I'm like, oh, I'm going to check that one out. And so there was just this great discovery avenue. So again, if anyone's looking for a really fun, affordable streaming option, I would recommend Highball, because I had a blast for a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to diving into it further down. Now, I know you're also in Toronto, and you obviously have one of the largest film festivals in the world up there with TIFF. Do you find, and with the wonderful visual mug right there on display, now, Melissa, I believe you mentioned on an interview with our friend Seth Vargas from last year. I'll have that interview in this description as well, so you can check out that interview. But I think you mentioned you brought somebody from TIFF on board to Highball. What's your relationship with at the film festival? Do you try to use that as a good avenue to bring stuff to the streaming platform? Like, what's your relationship being so close with TIFF right there?
Yeah, I worked at TIFF for how many years? I worked there for 6 years, I think, as a sort of Q&A host. So I would intro films and I would facilitate Q&As after the films, which was an amazing job. Like, I basically just ran from theater to theater, and I interviewed, and like really not interviewed, but facilitated the conversation with so many incredible writers, directors, actors, and I loved it. And then I spent a year there as well in the industry department, programming the industry conference. So I was one of the main programmers for the industry conference, which meant I could, create conversations and staff them. And again, I dealt with so many fascinating people. So I had worked there for many years, and I met so many great people. So we brought on a couple of people from TIFF to work here at HighballTV, and they helped program, and they worked in our social media department. They did so much, and they were so incredibly helpful. And so much of the programming that you're looking at that you're loving is because of their wonderful work and because of the connections they had as well, having worked at TIFF and their knowledge. And then we've gone to the festival as filmmakers, as producers, as exhibitors, in terms of HighballTV, as buyers.
As uninvited guests. I crashed with a
Mad crash, yes.
That worked out very well. That's where I sold this movie.
Yeah.
By lying about the fact that I had a pass.
Yeah, Matt didn't
That's
get
amazing.
it, and then he and his brother
sold their movie there anyway.
They walked around with T-shirts that said, "I have a movie to sell." And they got a deal.
And we sure did.
I have a note from the interview with Seth, Melissa. You had mentioned that you two are both like completely dogged and determined, and that just kind of encompasses Matt's determination right there.
Oh yeah, I will spend more time laminating a pass so that it looks like believable than is probably healthy.
Yeah, you gotta be. You know, getting into film festival, especially a film festival like TIFF, is really challenging. There's a lot of politics. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's so much commerce happening. There's so much that goes into it. So, you know, we've leveraged TIFF, I suppose, our proximity to it and our connections to it in order to build relationships and make deals. And last year we went and as producers, and we've managed to make a lot of sales through the conversations we started at TIFF and then again at EFM in Berlin this year. So, you know, we don't have a direct relationship with them. And we kind of like it that way because, you know, I think sometimes people can get really really narrow focused on festivals or on the big festivals. And TIFF has its place in the ecosystem, obviously, in quite a large place. But we're kind of doing our own thing here. And so we like to use it in the ways that work for us and then continue to branch out. Because as Canadian filmmakers and then as people in Toronto, you kind of get a little under the radar if you're in TIFF. Like, it's hard as a Canadian filmmaker to get much notice outside of Canada and even inside of Canada because there's just so much to compete with, and there's celebrities and there's so much money, and we don't have that money, you know. So
and there's also a downside. If you're a Toronto filmmaker and your film screens at TIFF, then all your friends and family are going to come see the movie at TIFF and give their money to a $40 million a year juggernaut instead of to you, the filmmaker, who could really use that money. So we have a tendency to do our own private screenings or our own public theatrical runs in Toronto. I don't think we have submitted a film to TIFF in years at this point, because it's not a path to commercial success for us.
We also don't work with, at this point, with Telefilm, which is sort of the Canadian studio, if you will. And Telefilm and TIFF have a very close relationship. And so most of the films that get into TIFF are Telefilm films. It's just sort of the way our system in Canada works. And so
some would call it a conflict of interest.
There are some hot takes to be had. But I think, you know, you can, I like being able to like be in the orbit of it and then also have our own little orbit. I think it's been a beneficial system up to this point. Who knows where the future will lead us? We are open to all possibilities.
I'm just a small-time podcast host here, but one day on the bucket list, I do have TIFF, hopefully, to get up there at some point. And if I ever get up there, I'm going to try to find you two, and we'll have a lunch or something like that. It's on the agenda.
See a bunch of movies together.
Yeah,
we'll go
exactly.
To Madness. The horror movies are awesome.
That'd be fun.
I'm always, like, TIFF's always the one I always kind of pencil, because in a lot of cases, those are sort of a good indicator of what's going to be in the general film festival award season discussion, and so it's always nice to see what's going on with TIFF.
Yeah, by the numbers, whatever movie wins audience choice at TIFF, if there's a studio behind it, there's a good chance its Oscar run will result in a nomination.
But not this year, I don't think.
Not this year. Well, because
Life of
Chuck didn't have distribution yet.
Yeah, it took them a long time to release that movie after
they lost their steam.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we, Matt and I have talked about it a little bit in a DM, but I think we're both, and Melissa, I'm not sure if you're in the same boat as us. We were kind of down on Life of Chuck. There was so much hype around it for me that I was expecting to be like 5-star wowed, and I just wasn't quite there, and it left me feeling a little disconnected from what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think it lost its way partway through. I thought it started off strong, and I was really into it, and then I think it loses its way. It didn't quite come together for me. But I think it's a lovely performance by Tom Hiddleston. I just think it didn't come together.
And I also think that movie is a great surprise. It is not the kind of movie you want to go into with huge expectations. It's a great surprise. Then you know, when it's hyped up for 8 months after winning TIFF's audience choice, there's nowhere to go but down.
I can see that second act for, like, if you have no expectation for that movie, when you get into that second act and there's a big number that happens in that, I can imagine if you are just going in completely blind, that's going to knock you off your feet. And I can see why it probably did win the People's Choice, but then sitting on the shelf for so long did not do it any favors, I don't think, in the long run.
No, I mean, we saw it in at TIFF, we often will see like 4 or 5 movies a day. You're just going kind of from movie to movie to movie. And so in the midst of all of that, it was a lovely surprise. But yeah, standing alone on its own, I'm not sure it delivers that same.
Now, I want to dedicate plenty of time to Paige Darcy because I am so fascinated. But before we shift away from Highball, why don't you each select a couple of movies for somebody who's listening to this right now and maybe they are going to sign up for Highball? What would you guide them to as a couple of your favorites on the platform right now?
A couple of my favorites are in my picks. Fargo's Bang is one of my favorites because it's a neat little, like, early 2000s time capsule that was actually made 10 years after it's placed, which is funny because so was Paige Darcy. And I just kind of think it was an interesting sort of look back on a time in American politics from a like coming of age perspective of these like political activist women. And then I love Kati Kati. It's this like wild, like sci-fi fantasy afterlife story. If you got to be up for subtitles if you want to watch it, but it's a beast, that one. And then if you like a western, I'd say check out 6 Reasons Why.
I love it.
Well, Torrey Pines is one of my recommends to you and is on my list. I adore Torrey Pines. I think it's so innovative and the subject matter is very close to my heart. It's by a filmmaker in the Pacific Northwest, and it's really something. It also has a great song by Kimya Dawson, and Kimya Dawson for me is like such a early 2000s love, like a Juno soundtrack, such a time in my life, and the song is really great. And so I recommend that. Jar Boy, I think, is really a beautiful adaptation of an award-winning play from Canada, and it's a really simple story, but it's also very poignant and deep and about friendship and memory. And I highly recommend that. If you're in Canada, there's a series called The Bread Factory movies, Part 1 and Part 2 by Patrick Wang. Patrick Wang's a wonderful independent American filmmaker. We have a whole collection of his available only in Canada, but I love them so much that I will say if you are interested in really beautiful independent film, check out Patrick Wang movies wherever you can find them. So,
and if you have a VPN,
but I think they're incredible movies. The Bread Factory movies are about a small community center that is threatened by another arts center, and they have to fight for it. But there's so many beautiful stories inside of that overarching story.
And Star Trek Deep Space Nine's Nana Visitor is in there.
She is.
Very fun.
Yes. So as is Tyne Daly, like there's some recognizable faces. So yeah, I like the sort of human stories with a little bit of surrealism.
And to that end, I put Strangers in a Room there.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's Melissa brought over her friends from the Toronto Film Festival when we were starting HighballTV, and I brought over my friends from film and TV and commercial casting. And one of my friends happens to be he was often mistaken for me, and I was mistaken for him, but he's Indian, and I am not. And so,
but your personalities are so similar.
They are.
I think it shines through.
So Andre did a film about what it's like to be in the room when you're casting with people of color, and all the people behind the desk are white. And it also has, racism and microaggressions and like personal issues and a crazy haunting demon, which is super cool. So it's got a neat surrealist element to it that I really dig.
Yeah,
I definitely got to Kati Kati, Strangers in a Room, had fun with both those. Torrey Pines, Drawer Boy, everything that you both gave me this wonderful curation of things to check out. And so I would encourage everybody to check everything out. But again, you're going to find a ton of stuff on Highball that's like, you're just going to go down these rabbit holes. You're going to find all of these things you've never seen, never heard of. My Letterboxd watch list got absolutely jam-packed loaded after I was going through the list. And here you are just dropping more with me. Patrick Wang, a name I'm not familiar with at all. So I'm going to go down that rabbit hole now too.
He's super cool.
He's wonderful. Yeah.
Let's talk Paige Darcy though. Okay. This is a big one. This is your directorial debut as a team, correct?
Yes. Melissa has supported me in a couple of films, and I've supported her in a film. But this was the first time that we came at it as two equal directors, each sharing the big chair. And I had a good time. I mean, we did it again after this, so I guess it worked out.
Yeah. I think we liked it.
For somebody who's not familiar with the movie at all, without spoiling anything, because there's a lot in there, why don't you give a quick synopsis, a little, 30, 60-second idea of what to expect from Paige Darcy, Reluctant Detective?
Sure. Imagine if Nancy Drew was so traumatized from her horrifying life of solving mysteries that she just gave up on all of it, became a hard-drinking mess, and we caught up with her in her late 20s, early 30s, and she was dragged back into mystery solving. That's basically the story. What if Nancy Drew was an absolute mess?
Or if Reacher meets Scooby-Doo, as I believe one reviewer recently posted to you.
We had a critic say that it's like Scooby-Doo meets Reacher, and we were like, yes. The fight scenes are pretty phenomenal in this movie. We had an amazing choreography and stunt coordination team. Dan Yaboni, who just knocked it out of the park with his team. And in fact, last week, the red shirt who died on Star Trek Strange New Worlds plays a major stunt character in Paige Darcy.
He's also, David McInnes. He's a wonderful actor and stunt performer. He's also in, if you see the trailer for Nobody 2, mm-hmm. That whole main fight is him. And I remember messaging him and being like, oh my God, dude, you're all over this trailer. He said, that's my one scene. And somehow they've anchored the entire trailer with it, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So I have a bunch of questions about Paige Darcy. I've watched it 3 times since I had the opportunity to check it out, and I enjoy going back to it more each time.
Amazing.
For somebody, I'm about to turn 40 this year, and this is like, I'm the right age. I feel like the perfect age. It's. I also feel like we've had some conversations. Somebody asked me online last week, like, oh, is this for my kid? And I sort of maybe stepped into the wrong spot by saying it's not for kids. I don't want to confuse anyone. It's not for kids, but I think it's more designed for somebody my age, right?
Yeah, I think our like 10-year-old nephew was like loved it, but I also think that like I wouldn't say like bring your 10-year-old to this. I think depends on the 10-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
I was watching RoboCop when I was 7.
There you go. I saw Halloween and The Exorcist at about 10 or 11 as well, so I've fallen into the same trap. How did you connect to Alice Moran, who's both the star of the film and the writer, as far as I understand? How did you cross paths with her? What led you to want to be involved in this project? How did it all come together?
Okay, you've seen the movie 3 times, so you must remember the second caper, in the one where Mrs. Crandall's in the mine and her hood gets taken off. That's our very good friend Amanda Barker. She's marvelous. She's an Eli Roth stalwart now. She's in Thanksgiving and she's amazing in it. She's shooting something else with him right now.
Yeah, so
she introduced us to Alice at Just for Laughs in Montreal, like a decade and a bit ago.
Yeah, in 2013, because we had just gotten engaged.
Yes,
that's how I remember this. We met in 2013, and Alice sent Matt the script, and we read it, and we thought it was really fresh. We thought like, there's not a lot of straight up comedies with women at the center that, have that mix of violence and comedy and also relationship. And so we tried to make it back then. We tried to make it in 2014, I think. Like we went for funding. We really gave it a shot. And then,
well, and as it turns out, it is easier to make your own film studio than it is to work with Telefilm. And so we took it to Telefilm, and the guy who was in charge at the time 100% did not understand it, and just didn't think it was a good fit.
And I think, because we don't make as many movies in Canada, we don't have as much money and as many people as the United States. I think, there's certain types of movies we tend to make. We don't make a lot of genre comedy. The comedy is very specific. It's very quirky, and it's sort of like hoser comedy a lot. And so I feel like it really wasn't the right place for us to get that funding. So years go by, and we kept revisiting it, and Alice kept updating it and shifting it. And then, she submitted, I think it won an award for the screenplay, and, just continued to be interested in it. And then once the production arm of HighballTV was up and running, and we had an opportunity to make it and finance it ourselves, we thought, well, this is a perfect opportunity. We really have loved the script for a long time.
If nobody else is going to greenlight it,
let's do it. So that's how that all came to pass.
I also want to give a quick shout out to, she's not in the film a ton, but Beatrice Schneider plays the young Paige Darcy and sets the tempo immediately in that first opening scene with her. How did you come across her? Because she's another person I immediately identified. I'm like, okay, this young woman has a lot of talent already, and I can't wait to see where she goes with her career.
Yes, well, we had an audition, like an open audition through Jesse Griffith's casting.
Yeah, Jesse.
And Jesse's great.
Another person I met from TIFF.
Yeah. Jesse's amazing.
Yeah.
Jesse found us some super talented kids, and the moment we saw B, our jaws were all on the floor. We were like, oh man, this kid is so smart. Alice, is she too smart? Are we going to believe that you could grow out of this incredible genius? We're like, if we put enough drugs and alcohol in her, sure.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
We were all so impressed. She just nailed it. And really, on set, what she's doing on set is what her audition was. Like, it was, we had to do almost nothing. She was perfect every take.
Yeah.
And she's gone on to do some really fun things.
She's in a phenomenal Christmas movie.
Yeah, the Best Christmas Pageant
Yes.
she's in. And
I just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, she's a real talent and also a really great kid. Like, just
such a pro.
We were really blessed. The kids in this film were fantastic. We had a great time, and they've grown into really. I mean, it's been a few years since we shot it, so now we see them. They're like, they've shot up.
So now we're writing movies with tweens.
We are. We have a movie premise with a couple of them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, something else that really stood out to me, again, it hit me in like this nostalgic spot. The music is so on point, but specifically, you've introduced me to a band who is now like in my Spotify playlist every day at this point, and that's a Canadian all-female band called The Beaches, who, again, I had no familiarity with until I heard them in this film, and now I am becoming a diehard fan of their work already. And I've had people reach out to me even in town here in St. Louis and say, oh my God, I saw The Beaches when they were in town. They're clearly a band that I have just missed the boat on at this point already. But how did you get connected with them? What led you to want to have their music be such a staple of the film? Because it really does fit the tone perfectly.
I'll tell you, it all started with the song we use in the car chase, Blow Up. I heard that on the radio on, I'm going to say, CKFM. Yeah,
Canadian
on 102.1.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving at the time and listening to it, and I was like, oh, this song would fit perfectly. I got to look these people up. And then I was like, oh, shit, they're Canadian. Phenomenal. Okay, well, what else do they have? And none of their music sounds quite like Blow Up. But every song they have is incredible. So we started to think, oh, well, if we make a deal with them for this song, why don't we also get this one and that one? Next thing we knew, we wanted like 8 Beaches songs. And then it turned out they were huge fans of Avril Lavigne, who's, like an OG Canadian punk star. And so we thought, okay, well, let's bring in her as sort of the flower from which everything blossoms. And then we got ourselves just a lot of good 21st century, like, fun punk in there.
Yeah, we just basically plotted it out. We read through the script and we were like, this would work here, this would work here. Before we even filmed anything, we had already kind of laid out where the needle drops could happen. And then we filmed and we made a deal with them going into filming. So we knew we were going to have the rights to those songs. And then in editing, we started laying them in, and pretty much everywhere we thought a song would go, it did. We shifted it. We added an extra song, and we shifted a few things. And then, of course, because the movie, it takes place in 2012 mostly, so we put the Avril Lavigne track in, and then they have a Y2K night, and we had cut the temp score. We had put the Venga Boys in because we were like,
Nothing says Y2K.
Nothing says Y2K.
Venga.
And I was like, there's no way we're going to get the Venga Boys. We both were like, this is a temp score dream.
This was like a Six Flags anthem. There's no way we can afford this.
When that needle drop hit, I was like clubbing in my living room.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. And then when we could get it and it fit in our budget, we were over the moon. We did get a couple of like fun sound-alikes because there's only so far you can stretch the kind of budget we have in terms of music, right? So,
and if you're in a club and there's music behind people talking, you don't want to spend all your money putting a Backstreet Boys song underneath somebody's chit-chat.
Yeah, so our great music supervisor was like, here are some songs that are like the Backstreet Boys and like Britney Spears.
And they came out in 2001.
Yeah, and here they are, and it was sort of perfect. So, we worked with a great music supervisor.
Cody Partridge at Pear Tree.
Yeah, he's great. And the Beaches were just so open to it. Their people were really open to it. And I'm so happy that people are discovering their music through the film. That's like the thing you want. So it was really, really a special collab there.
Yeah, and buy albums. Buy
Yes.
hoodies and shirts, and they have a fun hat that says Lesbian of the Year. There's great stuff you can buy from them. It's great merch.
Yeah, like I said, I would have never seen or heard of this band until I watched the movie, and that is one of the beauties of film, is that you discover all this new music that you just haven't had the chance to get into. And so I'm at that point. Now, another thing in terms of you're talking about a budget and you're working in certain confines, you've just recently posted something in the last couple of days on social media about another area you sort of had to work around a budget, but it's this really cool new technology that I want to explore for a minute with you, and that's the Volume Studio, which for people who are not familiar with that, that's what The Mandalorian was shot on. I know that Disney uses that quite a bit for like their Obi-Wan Kenobi series. They've used it in a bunch of different avenues. Now, you have a car chase scene in Paige Darcy. As opposed to going out and trying to film that in the real world, you were able to use this Volume Studio to shoot that. Number one, how awesome was it to get the opportunity to use Volume, and how did you apply that to the film to work around maybe the restrictions of going out and shooting a car chase scene in real time?
Sure. I mean, the only way I had ever worked with a moving car in the past was either what's called poor man's process, which is where you have some people at the back of the car trying to push the fender, and the front of the car pushing it back, and then you have enough like Atmos steam going by or looking up at the sky that you believe the car is moving. So that's the cheapest way you can do it. The most expensive way you could do it is called a process trailer, which is you put the car on a trailer, a very low profile trailer, so that when you look out the window, it kind of doesn't seem too elevated. And then you haul that behind a tow truck up and down the street. And my brother shot a music video like that, and it is incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
So those are the only two ways we could think to do it. And this was a long scene in a car where there's collisions and gunshots and cars spinning out and driving on railroads. So it didn't seem possible in any way to do this in a $4.5 million movie.
No, and technically there were 2 car scenes, because there's also a scene where they're just chatting in the car. So we knew we needed, and I think in the script originally there were 3, and we eliminated one and we put it in a different location. But we were like, there's just no way we can do these with a process trailer. We do not. It's like more than the budget of the whole movie. So Matt, again, had some experience or a real understanding of how to utilize the volume. We met with a studio, just outside of Toronto,
called 2D House.
And they were very keen to work with us. And I think we're the first thing to shoot in there to use the volume in quite this way. And so it was a really careful planning of how to shoot it in terms of, because, the volume isn't 360, so you have to be very strategic about where the camera is going to be pointing. And then our stunt team came up with a great plan to have a stunt driver ride a motorcycle, and we put a 360 camera in the back of it, and he drove the route. And we had a white van follow him so that we could simulate and have, when we turn the camera to the back to look out the back of the car, you can see the white van following. And so we did that one night in Hamilton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto, and they
closed off one road and ripped up and down it on a motorcycle as fast as we could.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was very fun. And then there was one piece at the end where they're in peril and there's a train involved, and we couldn't get that last piece that night. And then as we were, heading toward production, the time was getting tight, and it seemed like we can't really make this work to shoot this. And the thing
can't get the rights to close a railroad, to put a car on it, to really do anything on a railroad legally.
Yeah, and the thing about the volume, of course, is it's great for post-production because you don't have to do all of the rotoscoping and compositing you would have to do with a green screen. But the other side of that is that you have to have all the footage up front because it has to play while you're shooting. So Matt and I scouted a place that had very little light pollution. We rented a Kia Soul, which I think you have in the US. And then we put an LED light in the dashboard, and Matt set up his camera, and I drove slowly toward my husband as he filmed. And then at the last moment, I swerved. And then Matt flipped the lights, the image, because all you could really see
It's
was
just
the
headlights,
lights, right?
And the thing about a train is it can't look too much like a car or it's going to feel weird. But nobody gets to see what a car looks like upside down. And as soon as you put the third light in there, it doesn't look like a car at all. And so that's really just a car driving towards me that we turned into a train.
Yeah.
And everything else was just built so that the 360-degree illusion would be maintained. That those cars passing in the opposite direction when they're driving on the one-way street, all added. I composited all of that before we did the shoot, so that we'd be able to sit in that 270-degree LED and watch cars zip by that were never even there.
And the magic of movies is, between that, the camera work, the handheld camera work, the actors' action, and then practical things like, sugar glass coming through the back so it seems like glass, us pulling off the side view mirror, and then sound design. When you add all those things together, you can get the energy you need and enough of the visual you need to read as the car chase. And you never had to actually, I guess I stunt drove a car for unsanctioned stunt driver for, this long, a tiny little bit.
But yeah, it's our little like Children of Men wonder. We're really proud of doing it on this much money.
And it's so cool, the social media reel that you posted. I'll repost that once this episode goes up, because you get a nice behind the scenes of all that goes into that. And it was just fascinating because in my mind, I had perceived volume as this really high-end technology that was maybe going to be really not cost effective, but maybe there's a world, talking about, again, a mid-market level, maybe there's a world where this technology allows for an action movie to be made on a little smaller budget. It seems like a technology that's going to potentially improve filmmaking process.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if there's something that is budgetarily out of reach, it can make it possible. Or if it's logistically out of reach. Mandalorian is an interesting example because it's impossible to put a shiny chrome dude on a green screen and key that out because he's shiny chrome. He's green all over, and he would just disappear. So they're really showing off on The Mandalorian by having Pedro Pascal's costume entirely reflective.
What I'll say, too, in terms of going back to that mid-budget movie and so sort of how we meet this moment, I think one of the things I've learned from Matt as a director is I learned a lot about VFX from him. And I'm very grateful for that, because I think part of the way we can make movies for smaller budgets and make them more sustainable and feasible is we need people at the helm who understand how to work with these technologies, how to use them in a way that is both financially feasible, but also allows for a quality product. I hate calling it a product, but you know what I mean? That you're getting something in the end that is really well done. And I think, as budgets inflate and directors are attached to films and they have no sense of how the VFX work, there's a whole other team that's dealing with all the VFX. I really think you need, as a director, to have some sense of what that process is so that you can communicate in a way that is also cost effective. Because if you don't understand how it works, and then you got to go in and do revisions and they have to reshoot it, like that's just such a money drain. And I think as these technologies develop, we're going to need people who have a lot of different skill sets that can approach filmmaking in a new way, that includes all the wonderful older techniques that we know and love, and actually we wish maybe lighting would go back to a time when
there were lights.
But I think that having those skill sets and that understanding, even if you can't do it, but having an understanding of that other department and how it works, since it's such a large part of filmmaking now, is really important.
And so I have a whole review I'm going to do on Paige Darcy at the start of every month. I'll do like everything I watched the previous month, and I'll talk about it a little bit. I've got a full review I'm going to do on Paige Darcy. So I won't go into everything now, but I do want to point out, of all the funny things, there's a lot of funny moments just sprinkled throughout the movie because it's tonally, it's covering a lot of bases, which makes it a lot of fun. It's a fun exploration to go through. But the line that today, when I was watching it again, it's the scene in the car with the Domino's gag. And I won't spoil it for people, but it hit all too close to home for me when you're trying to talk to a Siri or whatever on your phone and you're trying to ask for something and that thing just does not understand you. The Dominics gag it had me on the floor this time. I love it. Just great writing.
Great writing, and Brendan is so great. And then, we had to talk to Domino's about that because, you got to clear all this stuff if you're going to mention brands.
You're not disparaging it per se, but you're not choosing Domino's.
You're not endorsing it either. And so we had to have a conversation about the script, how we could say it so Domino's was okay with it, which was a fascinating conversation.
Because the original draft of that was, wow, Dominics, that's nasty pizza.
Domino's, that's nasty pizza. Yeah,
we can't say that about Domino's.
Yeah.
So you actually had to go to them and clear the verbiage?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, we had to talk to Mitsubishi about having their Eclipse. Yeah, we had to go to a lot of brands on this movie just to make sure everything cleared. Apple, IKEA, we had a few companies that we needed to get the go-ahead from because we wanted to have the iPod kind of tell you when this movie took place. And it took place at the moment where the Shuffle Mini became the Shuffle Nano. And so that sets it at a specific moment in time. And so we got to have Apple say yes.
What's also really fun about the movie and makes it such a rewatchable experience for me is there's so much stuff that's popping up on screen, whether it's you're seeing a phone conversation happen on the frame or there's writing, visible writing happening on the screen. There's a lot of stuff where it's, and I mean this as a compliment, but it happens so quickly. There's so much coming at you that you need to go back a couple of times. The first time I'm there for the plot. The second time I'm trying to unpack something else. The next time, this watch today, I was just going there for all the fun lines. I was trying to pull all the comedy out. And so it's been a fun exploration. I've gone over the time that I allotted for you, so I appreciate you taking the time for me. I'm going to send you out with one final question before we wrap it up. And so we always hear about directing duos, and there's, the Coen brothers and the Safdie brothers. A lot of times they happen to be brothers, but there's not a lot of husband-wife duos in the directorial realm. But you two, from what I can tell from the movie I watched, it seems like you have a really great balance between the two of you. So I'm going to ask this to each of you. What's your favorite part about directing with the person sitting next to you right now? What do you love most about their directorial style?
I love the way Melissa speaks to actors. It's amazing to me. When I started directing, I audited acting courses so I could see how actors and their coaches talk to each other. And it really helped me be able to tell someone and express to them what I wanted them to do. But to watch Melissa do it, it is a masterclass in expressing emotion in an understandable way quickly. Because it's great to have someone understand it, but we're on the clock. You need to have them understand it fast. And Melissa is so effective and efficient and kind and is exactly the kind of trust fall an actor needs to feel like they can take a shot, do something, and we get electric stuff because Melissa's instinct is so great.
Thank you. That's so nice. Thanks for this question, Andrew.
Hey, no problem. I wanted to surprise you with it.
I love it. Well, I've already spoken quite a bit about, Matt's technical skill, which I think is definitely one of the things that I love. He can come up with solutions no one else on set would have ever thought of, and he can do it in a moment, in a second. He will look at the frame and go, I know exactly, we move that light this much, I tilt the camera this much. If you do this, if you put the gun right there, I'll get a glint right there. And it happens in a matter of seconds. It's remarkable, which allows us to go so quickly. And so that is definitely one thing. But what I want to focus on is just the attitude Matt brings to set. And people have talked about this a lot. There's an enthusiasm, there's a wonder that Matt has about film and about filmmaking and about actors and everyone on set. He is so excited no matter what. We're over time. We're losing light. It's not working. The gun keeps falling apart. And he is like, all right, let's do it again. And there is never a moment where he is dogged by it. Is that a word? Where he is, deterred by it. His stamina and his enthusiasm is remarkable. It keeps me going because I will get to that point and be really anxious. And if he's anxious on the inside, no one would ever know it. Which on a set and as the director is key. You have to make everyone believe it's possible, even when it's not. And so, yeah, that's great. That's what I love about him.
Well, you even said on your interview with Seth that Matt is always a glass half full kind of guy. And it seems like that is definitely shown on set frequently.
From the right angle, it might even look 2/3 full.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, Matt's the glass is overflowing. And I'm like, there's a drop left in the glass. And it has to last us the next week. We balance each other out that way in our relationship, and also I think
in our styles.
In our filmmaking styles. Yeah.
And I think it really comes across in Paige Darcy because I've seen the work that Melissa you did with Mother of All Shows, which is a phenomenal film. I recommend people go check it out. But it's a different lane than this movie, and it's much more an actors focused movie where the acting is very upfront and I haven't seen Matt's work yet as a solo director. I'm very excited to dig into that, but it feels like the two of you combined are a wonderful team. You both exude so much enthusiasm and positivity, and it's why I'm such a big fan of both of you personally, professionally. I want to thank you for all of your time doing this. Hopefully this won't be the last time we all get together and have a chat at some point down the road.
Yeah, we should do it again.
For people who aren't familiar with where they can find Paige Darcy, Reluctant Detective, why don't you let people know, whether it's in Canada, in the States, let people know where they can find it, where they can stream it, where they can check it out.
Sure. In Canada, it's available on HighballTV.com, and that's available on your phones, on your Apple TVs, your Rokus. You can find it on your computer. Apple. I like it best on Apple TV because then you get like the movie experience. And it's also available. It's going to be available on DVD very soon, but right now it's on the digital stage of things. And then internationally,
in the US, it's available on Prime. Amazon Prime, and it's also available on Hoopla. I think it's available on a few other places. There's a site called Fossum, if I'm getting that right.
I think Fossum.
Yeah, so it's available in a bunch of places in the US. We're working with a distributor there with a sales and distribution company, so they've placed it a bunch of places, but I know that if you have Prime and you go to Prime, you will find it there.
You made me so happy when you announced the physical media release, because as someone with 2,000 movies sitting on a wall directly to my right here, I cannot wait to purchase it and have it sitting on the shelf there.
And it's going to have special features. It's going to have behind the scenes stuff. It's not one of those bare bones DVDs.
We don't do that.
I cannot wait. And again, whenever that is available for people, I'll make sure to post that on all the socials so people can check it out. Again, I'm incredibly grateful for both of you for taking some time out of your day. This has been just the best discussion with the two of you, and it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Andrew. It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us. What a treat.
Absolutely.
Thank you.